Record. All right, everyone. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. We are going to go over understanding ethics in the nonprofit organization world. We're just going to be diving into ethics, and we're going to explore how to maintain integrity, transparency, accountability, and how it really is essential for organizational success. So nonprofits and charities often find themselves under intense public scrutiny and suspicion whenever ethical dilemmas or lapses surface, particularly when these issues are highlighted on the news or on blogs. The last thing you want is for someone on TikTok to be talking about your organization. So definitely let's dive into first our centering community and land acknowledgement. So first, again, welcome. Thank you for attending today's technical assistance webinar. This webinar is presented by Amity Foundation, acting as the third-party administrator for LA County's Justice, Care, and Opportunities Department and the CFCI Care Grants. The CFCI, or Care First Community Investment, grants are the result of ballot measure J, voted in by LA County residents in 2020. Care First community investment funds are intended to be invested directly into communities and alternatives to incarceration that address negative outcomes caused by racially driven criminal legal system inequalities and long-term economic disinvestment. Today's webinar is being recorded. You do not have to be on camera. However, if you are on camera, just understand that your image may be captured on the recording, and that staying on the webinar represents your consent to being recorded. At Amity, we incorporate teachings that center the community before we begin our work. Today, we will use the LA County land acknowledgement to acknowledge and recognize the price paid by individuals that has resulted in efforts such as the Care First community investments. So we recognize that we occupy land originally and still inhabited and cared for by the Tonva, Tataviam, Serrano, Quiche, and Chumash peoples. We honor and pay respect to their elders and descendants. We acknowledge that settler colonization resulted in the genocide and into the genocide of the First Peoples. This acknowledgement demonstrates our responsibility and commitment to truth, healing, and reconciliation, and to elevating the stories, culture, and community of the original inhabitants of Los Angeles County. So, why do ethics matter in nonprofits? So let's just imagine this. A nonprofit executive misuses donor funds for personal vacations. It can look very wrong. Public trust can be gone, funding dries up, ethical practices prevent these nightmares, and you know, it can be a PR nightmare. Ethics are the foundation of any nonprofit. Unlike for-profits, nonprofits rely heavily on public trust and donations. A single scandal can unravel years of work. It can cause nonprofits to close. It can cause a revamp in leadership. It can really cause reputational harm and loss of donor confidence. Operating ethically ensures mission alignment and reinforces stability. So at the core ethical principles for nonprofits, transparency and accountability are really not optional. You should view them as non-negotiable. Think of your nonprofit as a fishbowl. Donors, funders, and the public see everything. Keeping it clean keeps trust intact. These principles form the ethical backbone of any nonprofit. Integrity means never losing sight of your mission, and transparency builds trust by showing stakeholders how resources are used. Accountability ensures responsibility, and respect fosters meaningful relationships with everyone involved. If ethics were cut and dry, there wouldn't be ethical dilemmas. We wouldn't have to use our moral compass. And unfortunately, life is a little more complicated than that. With so much at stake, we have to wonder why so much unethical behavior continues to exist in the nonprofit sector. And we have to think about the answer, the answer really lies primarily in human nature and each other's commitment to ethical behavior. People have various capacities for moral judgment. Some people have trouble recognizing morality, while others have trouble analyzing it. Everyone has different priorities related to moral behavior. In addition, outside influences can definitely impact everyone's ability to hold tightly to their moral values. So, to uphold ethical behavior, people have to be morally aware enough to recognize that ethics and integrity are at risk in certain situations. Moral recognition leads to moral decision making, which requires individuals to decide how to act in an ethical or an ethically correct manner. Moral intent can also play a factor because it requires us to decide which of our moral values should take priority before making a decision. Finally, moral action requires us to follow through on our ethical decisions. So, common challenges, common ethical challenges in nonprofits can be the ones on the slide: conflicts of interest, misuse of funds, lack of transparency, and favoritism in hiring or in promotions. We have like nepotism listed, we have hiding financials. So if you've ever seen, I'm sure we've all seen an individual within a company get a high paying role with zero qualifications. That's a classic conflict of interest in many times. We often face unethical challenges in nonprofit sectors, such as conflict of interest or misusing funds. Oftentimes, one organization is, the bad seed, and they give a bad light to everyone else. Transparency and clear policies are vital to navigating these issues. For example, when hiring or assigning tasks, favoritism can erode trust and morale. When you are hiring, we always encourage you to use interview questions, the same interview questions for every single candidate. That way, if that candidate ever comes and asks, if they could see their notes or if they know someone else that also interviewed and that other person also asks for their notes, they'll see that the questions align. There was no change or, they don't have anything that they could question on your end. The topic of compensation is an ethical issue for many people. Is it ethical to support a nonprofit where leaders are paid more than a modest salary? That question becomes even more complicated when an organization is struggling to meet its purpose or goals. Some volunteer leaders or staff of nonprofits feel that it's ethically appropriate to benefit from perks provided by the nonprofit because they're not getting paid. Travel expenses can be also another hot button or a hot issue for nonprofits. If volunteers or employees earn frequent flyer miles in the course of nonprofit work, is it fair to use them for personal purposes? Conflict of interests are, again, always a common concern in the nonprofit arena. There is a lot of subjectivity around what constitutes a conflict and what is considered preferential treatment. Sometimes donors are compelled to donate sums of money based on an emotional response only to find out that a nonprofit allocated an unacceptable amount of money for reserves, publicity, or other indirect purposes. Another issue that nonprofits can struggle with is financial integrity related to who is donating to them. If they receive donations from people or from organizations whose values are vastly different from the nonprofit, it doesn't always reflect well on their nonprofit. So, building an ethical culture. This can look different ways. A lot of organizations will develop a code of ethics that their organization stands by. And if they ever feel that an employee goes against that code of ethics, they will refer back to the code of ethics when relieving them of their duties. Providing ethical training is really important for staff and volunteers. And definitely establishing reporting mechanisms for ethical violations. So if leadership cuts corners, employees will too. Ethics definitely starts at the top and it trickles down. Making ethical training a priority. Think of it as nonprofit hygiene. You should always be thinking of this topic. Creating an ethical culture requires intentionality, and a code of ethics sets the standard for a lot of nonprofits. It's, their rule book, as you say, while training ensures that everyone understands it. Reporting mechanisms protect whistleblowers and encourage accountability. And leadership should embody the values they expect from the organization. So, what do regular ethical training look like for staff and volunteers? So, teaching them about conflict of interest and personal gain, identifying conflicts of interest in your organization, um, pull out case studies, ask them questions, do scenarios. Would you accept a donation from a controversial donor? Fundraising and donor relation ethics, ethical solicitation, donations, how to report concerns about financial mismanagement, workplace conduct and harassment prevention. So creating that inclusivity and respectful work environment. Again, those whistleblower policies and ethical decision-making framework. So those step-by-step guides for handling ethical dilemmas. Do group discussions in team meetings. What would you do if something were to happen? So we are actually going to do a scenario. A major donor offers $500,000 in gifts or just a donation, but requests that part of it go toward a personal project unrelated to your mission. So my question to everyone here, and you can just go off mute and answer, is do you accept the gift? How do you navigate this ethically? And what possible policies can prevent such dilemmas? If anyone wants to answer or share their thoughts, I definitely encourage you to go off mute.
Definitely not accept a gift. I think navigating it is maybe just even like sharing out like the reason why we wouldn't take this kind of donation. And policies, we have kind of like a procedure for gifts that we do receive and like the reporting process with it, maybe sharing that out as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for answering. So yeah, I mean, 500,000 is tempting, right? I mean, that can be really life-changing to an organization, especially a small nonprofit that's starting up. However, ethical standards should always come first. So definitely that transparency is key in maintaining trust with your stakeholders. So being prepared to address concerns openly and honestly can help mitigate the potential backlash from your organization. Why didn't you take 500,000? However, if accepting the donation comprises the nonprofit's ethical standards, conflicts with its mission, alienates key donors, supporters, definitely you should decline the funds. An ethical decision-making framework should be applied. So definitely consider the alignment with your mission and values. Does accepting this donation uphold your organization's integrity? Think about your stakeholder reactions. Will key stakeholders, your students, your faculty, your clients, your staff, your donors, or the community view this as compromising? Think about your potential reputation risk. Could this association harm the nonprofit's credibility or future funding opportunities? And the intent of the donation. So, is the donor using the contribution to improve their public image rather than support your mission? If your organization were to accept money, a large amount of money, any amount of money really, that goes against your alignment or missions, you should be issuing a clear public statement. That way you are ahead of anything that outlines the purpose of the donation, how it is used, why it aligns with the organization's mission, and how you can help address any concerns proactively. Even if you do deny it, getting ahead of it, and letting your staff know also, like like the person who came off mute stated, letting everyone know and being honest and transparent is always really important. So, practical steps for ethical decision making. So, think of this as an ethical GPS. I don't know how many of us really use GPS anymore, but we'll just say, a Maps app. But when in doubt, follow these steps to stay on course. So, the goal is to make value-driven decisions every single time. When faced with an ethical dilemma, follow these steps. Start by identifying the core issue and gathering all necessary information. Evaluate options through the lens of your mission and your values. They are there for a reason. You started your organization based off of that. So always go back to your mission and to your values. And once a decision is made, communicate it openly. Regular monitoring ensures accountability and really, really, really helps refine future policies. So, tools and resources for ethical practices. So, internal audits and financial reviews. Um, your finance department, your accountant, your bookkeeper, you should always routinely look at all of your financials. Look to see if you have whistleblower protection policies. Um, do you have an ethics committee or advisors? Do you have a board of directors? Look at resources from groups such like the National Council of Nonprofits. So think of ethics like cybersecurity. Constant vigilance is key. Audits, policies, committees, they all act as security measures for your organization. To maintain high ethical standards, leverage tools like financial audits and establish, an ethics committee. Protecting whistleblowers encourages accountability, and external resources provide guidance for best practices. So here is an example of a whistleblower protection policy. So you really want to state the purpose. For instance, this policy is intended to encourage employees, volunteers, to report unethical, illegal, or improper activities without fear of retaliation. You want to list out your scope. So who does it apply to? Does it apply to your employees, your board members, your contractors, your volunteers, anyone within the organization, right? The reporting violations, who can report? At the end of the day, any individual affiliated with your organization who witnesses or suspects unethical or illegal conduct should be able to report something. What can they report? Fraud, mismanagement, misuse of funds. violations of laws or policies, maybe harassment, discrimination, workplace misconduct, conflicts of interest, and you can add any other unethical or illegal activities on there. How to report. So how can reports be made within your organization? Do they send an anonymous email? Is there an online form? Is there a hotline? Can they directly go to the executive director, board of directors? Is there a designated compliance officer? Oftentimes within organizations, this is something that is given to someone in human resources. Again, can they do it via email, a written statement? And then confidentiality. So you want to ensure individuals that all reports will remain confidential to the fullest extent possible, right? The identity of a whistleblower will not be disclosed without their consent unless required by law. And then you want to put in an investigation process. So how long will it take for a report to be reviewed? 5 days, 14 days, 30 days. You can also state, that an impartial investigation will be conducted. What type of correction actions will be taken if the wrongdoing is confirmed? Protection against retaliation. Many employees fear retaliation. You want to ensure that no individual who makes a report in good faith shall face retaliation, including termination, demotion, harassment, or any adverse employment action. Retaliation against whistleblowers is, you can put it in there that it's grounds for disciplinary action, up to or including termination. You can also add, a policy review that the policy will be reviewed and updated periodically to ensure effectiveness. You can add your code of ethics, your whistleblower protection policy to help ensure that your nonprofit operates with integrity, again, accountability, transparency. So benefits of ethical practices. So integrity isn't just a buzzword. Ethics isn't just something that we should be aware of. We should be practicing it. It's your nonprofit's superpower. Operating ethically ensures sustainability and long-term success. Ethical practices aren't just the right thing to do, they're also good for your organization. By maintaining high ethical standards, you build trust, you strengthen your reputation, and you attract passionate individuals who align with your mission and organizational values. So again, ethics are the foundation for any nonprofit success. Always prioritize transparency, accountability, respect. So definitely ethics aren't just about rules, they are a mindset. Remember that ethics are essential to the long-term success of any organization, and that by prioritizing transparency, accountability, and respect, your organization can build trust and drive impactful change. Are there any questions? Don't think there are. So I'm gonna stop the recording. Um, well, before I stop it, thank you so much, everyone. I don't see any questions in the chat, but thank you so much, everyone, for attending today. We greatly appreciate having you here. Next week, we do have site visit training monitoring tool. It is being required for all program areas 22 to 46. So yeah, thank you and have a fabulous Wednesday.